Welcome to Power Hour, where the editors of Power Sports Business interview the movers and shakers of the industry. This episode is brought to you by Synchrony.
Hi, everybody. It's Brendan Baker with Power Sports Business, and today we're with a special guest from the CEO of Zero Motorcycles, and I'm hoping to get his name right, Sam Paschel.
It's Paschel.
Right? Paschel. Yeah. So I knew it. Okay. Well, give me 8 years and I'll get it right. But,
Right.
But Sam Paschel, I knew I had that right in my head. I was like thinking, okay. But yeah, with Zero, he's the CEO, and we're gonna kind of cover what all's going on with Zero today, and look at some of the things that might be coming with electric in the future. And so, Sam, tell me a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Zero, like how long they've been around, and a little bit like where you are right now.
Great. Yeah, Brendan, first, thanks so much for having me on. Pleasure to meet you. Pleasure to have a chance to talk to you and to all of your listeners through the Power Sports Network. Yeah, I've been at Zero. I just hit my 8-year mark as far as me at the helm of Zero Motorcycles. It's been an amazing ride. By background, lifelong motorcyclist. Had my first dirt bike. It was a Suzuki RM80 when I was about 8 or 9 years old. Way too much bike for an 8 or 9-year-old.
Yeah.
And lifelong rider. From that was like Honda CB550s and Triumph Bonnevilles. So like I owned a lot of different motorcycles over the time that I was been a rider. Engineer by background. I had a number of jobs in consumer products companies. Spent over 10 years at Burton Snowboards, really cutting my teeth on how to build, market, and sell products to really enthusiastic and engaged consumers in a sports category. From there, went to a public company, Skull Candy, in the audio space. Similar consumer base, but wildly different product, public instead of private. I was fortunate enough to be one of the leaders there and like a named officer in a public company. Guided Skull Candy with that team to a transaction, and then was looking for what was next. And as a lifelong motorcycle enthusiast and rider, I got approached about the job at Zero Motorcycles as CEO. And it was an interesting moment, even 8 years ago, where there were questions about if electrification.
Let me do the math. 8 years ago. So what was that? 2015, 2014?
2017.
27. Oh gosh. My math is way off. What year are we in?
Yeah,
that's 10 years ago.
I take 10 years off all the time. I'm like, it's 2015.
Yeah.
Writing checks out.
I know. Where was I? I don't even know what year I'm in now. So, okay. Anyway, so that's why you're the engineer. You're a good math guy.
So in that moment, there was a question of like, you saw the very beginnings of sort of Tesla and EV taking off in four-wheel. And then it was like, if that kind of a transformation would happen in motorcycle, it could be a really interesting job. And then that question went from if it happens to sort of when it happens, it's going to be interesting. And we're seeing those signs of the early parts of steep adoption curves over the last several years, even with some of the doldrums and some of the EV headlines. Most of the projections for EV adoption have actually increased over the last 2 years when you look at 2030 and 2035. But so it was an interesting moment. It felt like a really interesting time to come into a space and be a part of this sweep of a disruption and adoption of a new technology. And I probably played phone tag with and went through like the recruiting process for a bit with the recruiter, and then finally had spent enough time in process that I decided I was going to drive to a local Zero dealer and take a test ride. In that one test ride, I went from being sort of intellectually interested in what was going on to being so desperate to be a part of what they were building that I would have taken a job as the janitor at Zero Motorcycles, let alone the CEO.
Yeah.
The ride experience blew my doors off. Riding a motorcycle, any motorcycle, it engages all 5 senses. On an electric motorcycle, visually, it's the same as riding a gas bike. From a sense of taste standpoint, I guess in an open-faced helmet, you can swallow as many bugs on an electric as you can on a gas bike. But I'll tell you that the sense of smell, the sense of sound, what you hear, and the tactile sense, what you feel, are so wildly different. It's a really quiet riding experience. You're much more aware of what's going on.
You're not shifting constantly. You're not worried about it's just twist and, brake.
I'm personally faster on an electric because there's one less thing to think about. I'm looking at my line. I'm looking where I am. I'm setting the angle. And then, but for me, the tactile response, like all the noise and vibration that happens in a gas bike, and ride any gas bike over 50 miles, even a really smooth one, and you get off the bike and your hands are a little numb.
Oh gosh,
It,
yeah.
it was the most pure connection between me as the rider and the road that I'd ever felt. Instantaneous torque and the responsiveness of the bike. I was expecting a lot less than what I experienced even 8 years ago getting on the bike. And this is the same story you hear from most of the engineers at Zero. It's like, oh, it sounded pretty cool. And then I rode the bike and I
Yeah.
came in. So that was the tipping point for me to come in.
So which is, I think you came in at obviously a very pivotal moment in the EV history. Like we were talking earlier, there have been EV motorcycles around from the 50s and 60s,
Yeah, yeah.
right? There some old ones, and I'll have to pull up some photos of some of those to see what those were like, but I can only imagine, I think I've seen some where I know that there was a guy that did, actually some of the early EV guys that did cross country, they would have a battery wagon that they would pull
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
have extra battery, which, I guess that's one way to do it. And they didn't have as many charging outlets as they do
I mean,
now, but
I'd say that the battery you had to pack in, like the pace of battery improvement and evolution is amazing. So the
yeah.
energy and power density being like how much get up and go, can you get out of the bike at once when you crack the throttle open? And energy density being like how much range can you get out? The ongoing improvements to battery technology means you're getting a 10% pickup every few years. So from back then until now, how much range you can squeeze into a relatively small package on an electric motorcycle is
That's the
amazing
key.
today versus where it used to be.
So let's shift gears here a little bit. I know, Zero is long history in the EV space. What, 2013, 2014, some or no, 2008,
Yeah,
2008.
2008.
I don't know why I keep getting 2014 stuck in my head. There must be some reason I'm
Something
thinking
important
20.
must have happened then. You
I
gotta
got to
look it
go
up.
back and look at what I think I had something on my timeline. Anyway, so 2008, which it was pretty early on if you look at the technology to be able
Sure.
to package that all in a bike and the weight and everything. And now it's come down as much as it has. They're still heavier though. I mean, the electric bikes are they heavier than gas bikes, or where do they range? And
It's a good question. Like, when I look at our new bikes, we just launched a new XE and XB, and that bike, the XE, which is like a 125cc equivalent, is about 220 pounds.
well, that's pretty light.
But that's not the big battery. So what I'd say is like first, wet weight and dry weight are relatively the same because like a
Yeah.
charged battery and a discharged electrons are infinitely light, so it doesn't matter.
There's not a lot of
Um,
fluids in you're not having a lot of oil
yeah,
and
you're not carrying any of that. We have one fluid on the bike, it's brake fluid.
yeah.
So wet weight and dry weight, you're going to get a difference on a gas bike. We're a little bit heavier. What I'd say is like when you get on one of the bikes, one of the things our engineers have done a great job with is, especially on our premium bikes, most of the battery weight is pretty low slung. So like a lot of the weight is very low. So sort of lock to lock and just like turn to turn, it's a really light, nimble bike for as big as some of them are. And they're
Yeah.
they're really nimble to handle incredibly well. A lot of that's the layout of where you're putting the weight and what's going on. So maybe a little bit heavier, dry weight to dry weight, but when we're fully charged and the gas bike's fueled up, you're at nominally the same.
Yeah, and you've got, plus the torque is different, the feel overall. But yeah, I mean, I think just a lot of it with a bike is just the feel from the weight from when you're leaning into a turn and leaning, tipping it in, and you're like, whoa, that's a big heavy bike. If the weight's down low like that, you don't feel that so much. So, but yeah, I mean, you guys have done a phenomenal job over developing electric, and I think it's been, there's been a lot of electric fallout here in the last year or two. Energica,
Yep.
Italian brand, which had a lot of promise. They've filed for bankruptcy. Cake, all you can go on and on.
Yeah.
How are you guys still standing? And is this? I mean, I know you make a great product, but is it? Is there some kind of magic in this formula that you've put together?
I think, well, magic in the formula. So from the very beginning, we focused on like a lot of the brands on making motorcycles that were aimed at broad consumption by consumers. They weren't like lightning, like super high power race bikes or these like
Right.
sort of niche motorcycles. We were making them to get into the hands of actual consumers in the real world and for use. Beyond that, like, hey, subscale electric vehicle companies, there's one electric vehicle company that is consistently profitable, and that is Tesla. So these are cash burning enterprises until you get to scale. And we are not
Yeah.
yet at the scale that we need to be a better than break even business. And that's not going to be a surprise or mystery to anybody. One of the big benefits beyond just a rabid and diligent drive for efficiency, as far as like the teams we have, how hard they work, how much we squeeze out of really smart choices on the engineering side to build a range of bikes. We have had a very long-term committed private equity partner. It's a company that invests for transformational opportunities like this, not over years, but over decades and decade plus.
That's a
So
good partner to have.
yeah, and it's been amazing. So beyond just like making the best choices we can, focusing on core segments of the market, being as efficient as we can be, both in how we spend every dollar and how we develop the technologies to go over a range of products, we have both a long-term consistent private equity partner, and then in the last several fundraisers for us, we have strategics like Polaris and Hero Motocorp that see the promise in our technology and in our capabilities and have come in as well. So at the investment level, building a network of committed investors who see the future in a similar way and understand that, look, there's one set of winning and losing brands on a global basis in power sports today. There is the probability that there's going to be a wildly different set of winning and losing brands on the other side of electrification. In
Right.
four wheel, you see the proof point of that in Tesla is like one of the largest market cap transportation companies in the world, who
Yeah.
seemingly they've been at it for a long time, but like they eclipse the European brands and the US Detroit brands at a relatively rapid transition to even 20-25% adoption of electric.
I mean, they had
Um,
they were the Wall Street darlings too, so I think they were able to get that, ride that wave and then actually deliver on it. So, but I think they show what's possible,
sure.
you
So
know.
we have committed investors in some of the best partnerships you could ever hope for in EV or power sports, that we get the benefits of. And as part of that, this last year we just closed another round and raised $76 million last fall that ensures that we're able to control our own destiny all the way into the launch of the next vehicles that are coming up in our product line.
So let's talk about that a little bit. I know we've heard a little bit about this, and you probably launched it or talked about it at EICMA and AIM Expo, just the recent AIM Expo, but you've got kind of some big plans over the next 2 years to come out with 6 new bikes,
Yeah, yeah. So
under 10 grand or 10, about the
yeah,
10 grand.
so yeah, we could switch jobs. I'll do the interview and you can you see. So
Yeah,
it
I
says at
just
least some of
read,
the
but
messaging
yeah.
is working and penetrating. So at EICMA, we announced the All Access initiative for us, which is giving a much broader range of consumers on a global basis access to the technology that we've been developing for 15 years. And it's the most ambitious expansion of our technology to more consumers, price points, and categories than the history of the company. And that is 6 new vehicles over the next 2 years, all under 10,000 US dollars. That's not, hey, we took a bike and we made a street bike and a fully fared street bike, and then we put knobbies on it. These are 6 distinct
Totally different.
platforms after 6 distinct segments in the market. And the funding that we raised was to fuel that expansion of us. So look, we spent the last 15 years perfecting an electric powertrain in the premium high performance end of the market. And
Yeah.
we do that so we can inspire consumers about what's possible in electric and really hone the best technology in the world for mid-power EV. And then you saw this happen again. We use Tesla because they're the easiest in the four-wheel space. They built their Model X and they built their Model S. And then they really had a leap off when they brought that technology and brand to the Model 3, which was a much more affordable vehicle, opened up to a lot more consumers than
Mass
just the premium
production
mass
vehicle,
production.
which,
So
yeah.
this all access initiative for us, that is that Model 3 moment where we're taking an unbelievable brand, some of the best dealers and best global distribution in the world for EV, and we're bringing that in our technology to more affordable price points to give access to this tech to a much broader group of consumers than we ever have before.
I
And
mean, that seems exciting to
I mean,
me
look, no
because
matter whether people feel like, oh, electric was like on a tear and now maybe it's a question or it's flattened, the expansion in addressable market, like just the size of the market we now get to speak to as these vehicles enter,
right.
is 10 to 20 times the size of where we were at the high
Yeah,
end.
10 grand price point, that market in that mid-range bike is a lot bigger market than your high-end premium
Yes,
segment, which you might make a little more margin on though, you know,
sure.
but you're going to be, you're that if you can master that 10 grand segment, which I think personally is what this industry needs more of. They need more vehicles in that price range because they're getting too expensive, you know.
Yeah,
I mean, with a lot of the younger kids coming in, if you look at if we want to foster that next generation of riders, like
sure.
everyone talks about, we can't put no one's coming in to buy a $20,000 bike that doesn't
Sure.
really know how to ride,
Yeah, like for us, this
you
is
know?
exactly the rationale. So we launched the first two vehicles of that six vehicle collection were launched in November at the European Trade Show. They are the XE and the XB. The XE it's a sort of 125cc equivalent dirt bike, 53 mile
I'll
per
get
hour
a
top
image
speed.
of it and we'll pop
Oh,
it
great,
in here.
great.
I can always pop that into the final
And,
cut there,
and we
but
have
yeah.
stuff for you too that's just like here's like all the specs, but the top speed is 53 miles an hour, 65-mile range. You got 485 foot-pounds of torque in a
Wow.
223-pound vehicle. Now that's some of that's gearing, not just straight from the motor. It's a
Yeah.
21 horsepower bike, unbelievably well balanced, great handling, $6,500, right? And then
That's
the
amazing.
the
Yeah.
XB for us is the next bike down. Top speed of that's 50 miles per hour, 40-mile range, 275 foot-pounds of torque, which is still a ton, 10
Right.
horsepower at about 140 pounds, and that's a $4,200 vehicle. So again,
Now the
though
XB, are these are street bikes, right? Or are they dual sport?
these are dirt for now,
Okay.
not on-road homologated, but registerable. So not just e-bikes that are scaled up, they can be registered. They have identification numbers associated with them.
Yeah.
But off-road vehicles, not on-road off-road. And the regulations, frankly, in Europe and the US are wildly different. They're a little all over the map.
Right. They're all over the place. And that's one of the things where I feel like because we're really still at the beginning of the EV evolution in a lot of ways, aside from a few success stories, it's still getting figured out, especially on the like the dirt bikes, so smaller range dirt bikes that are almost like they're in between a mountain bike and a motorcycle, they got a lot of power and they can
Sure.
almost look like a mountain bike. They don't have pedals, but so it's trying to understand how they fit in and where, and I think regulations right now are all over the place, especially in the US.
Yeah, like so for us, like we're committed to doing the right thing for our consumers. It is a little bit of the wild, wild west in some of those categories. We're again committed to doing the right thing for our consumer and bringing a level of legitimacy both in the quality of the product and our approach to the vehicle's licensure regulation to make sure we're doing the right thing. So we just took the XE to the Mojave Desert for some testing, and we had a test rider who's ridden every flavor of electric dirt bike in the category, and just like what came back from that exceeded our expectations. Just blown away by how capable the chassis is, how manageable the power is, how solid the build is versus the other bikes you see in that sort of mid weird wild wild west category.
Right.
And
They're all over the place as far as like manufacturing quality and
yes,
where they're,
here's what
support.
people should know. Like we're committed to making incredible products that meet or exceed the expectations of our customers. It's what the brand's been built on. And that's more important than winning any arbitrary spec sheet battle in the marketplace or finding categories to tuck in that are questionably legal. We're going to keep improving the products based on consumer feedback and needs, but like this is a legitimate brand that's been around since 2008. We have incredible dealer partners and an amazing network, which is expanding as a result of these launches. And we're going
So
to do the
you
right things for
had
them and our consumer.
AIM Expo. You got a lot of interest from dealer
Yeah.
interest, right?
Yeah, for
You
us, like starting in premium and now coming to price points, at $6,500 and $4,200 that are much more affordable. I think there are a lot of dealers that were like, this is interesting what you guys are trying to build, but you're in such a premium price point, it's such a niche that
right.
as we've announced the all access thing, we've seen 25% increase in dealer base just from the start of the year. We're on pace with just inbound interest to double this year on the dealer front. And I think we're getting, between 3 and 5 brand new applications from dealers a week right now since AM
That's
Expo. So
awesome.
exposure of those vehicles, the opportunity to touch them and feel them, and the announcement that like now we're entering into categories where you're seeing early signs of EV acceleration and adoption, and we're bringing the best brand and the best technology and electric to that. An overwhelmingly positive response from
Positive.
the dealers.
Yeah, no, I think that, it's interesting because, we've done a lot of survey where people are like, oh, electric's this far off and that far off. But really, I think that, and like you were mentioning earlier, that ramp is continuing to get, shorter and shorter as far as like adoption rates and what the technology, as long as that, I think that price has a lot to do with the
Sure.
accessibility of it. You get that 10 grand range for something that, a great dirt bike or a great, something that could be dual sport. Will you have any type street bikes in that range, or are they all going to be off road? What do you think?
It's a great question. Like I get this a lot. Like, oh, you guys announced 6 new vehicles. Like these two are great, and like they've just like emerged, right? Like, look at these 2 new bikes. People are like, what's next? And you're like,
Yeah.
well, so what I will say is we showed a concept bike at EICMA as well. That was a candidate for one of the 6 vehicles. The developmental name for it is Neutrino, and it's essentially similar price point category, a little bit higher power, and really focused on urban commuting and urban commuting opportunities. So a street bike, but taking that same tech, taking the same great brand and distribution network. So we brought it out there at EICMA to get feedback from dealers and from consumers, and to sort of just be a little bit more open as far as where we were heading and what was going on with concept vehicles. Peeling back the curtain a little bit earlier than we ordinarily would. And
Right.
the response to that vehicle was, again, overwhelming. People really positive. In retrospect, it didn't drown, but it definitely shared the spotlight with the XE and XB, which are available like now for
That
dealers
you
that were
already
at the
have
show.
out there, right?
So as far as anything we've teased that like we've got a great response to and should be on the calendar somewhere for us, that Neutrino sort of
That's the
urban
one that's
mobility
like a
concept
little bit
bike.
of a mini, like a Grom size
Like a
type
mid, it's
bike.
a kind of midi. It's like bigger than a Grom, not
Okay.
quite full size, maybe like 7/8 scale, but like it's a category and a form factor that's emerging from a number of brands as this
Gotcha.
like manageable, right-sized urban commute vehicle, and
Yeah.
really
I mean, I
positive
think
response to that. So the most I'll say is we showed a concept bike that was a street variant of stuff like this, and the response has been really good, and we like to listen to our dealers and our customers.
yeah. Well, and I'm sure there's a lot of hoops to go through to get to that point, but a lot of it is having the demand from the customers, your
Sure.
customer base, and dealers that are excited about it, that think they're going to have a base to sell it. Those are good, really good starting points for sure. Um, but I think one of the things I like about electric overall is that we can reimagine mobility in a lot of ways. You don't have to think of them in these same old boxes that we've
Yeah.
used to think. So we can really kind of break out of that. And I think you're starting to see some of that with now you guys have, again, Zero has done a phenomenal job with developing that premium level,
Sure.
showing the performance of it. But now you're kind of getting into this, well, hey, let's try something a little different here, a little different there. And that seems like it's resonating right now.
Yeah, I think, look, any category where you're seeing early, both like the technology is good fit for the use case, and you're seeing early signs of accelerating adoption, we have the brand and tech and permission to play and win. And that involves some experimentation. On the experimentation side, it's funny. Visually, so like the first cars were actually just horseless carriages, right? It was like a
Right.
carriage.
Yeah.
There was no horse, and they stuffed an internal combustion engine typically into the middle of it, a Winkle rotary engine, and all of a sudden, like it looks like a horse carriage with no horse.
Yeah.
And then over time, that evolves to be what we know as modern gas cars. So underlying that is when the means of propulsion changes, when the way that that vehicle moves forward shifts from being a horse to being an engine, the overall form factor and design of that vehicle is now free to evolve in some pretty dramatic ways. And if you look at the motorcycle space, the means of propulsion in electric vehicles broadly has changed from gas and like even just the need for like radiator coolant tailpipe for us, right?
I mean, it used to be air cooled and they didn't have, you didn't have
Yeah.
to worry about any of that. So,
So now you have the means of propulsion for these vehicles have changed, which now frees us up to wildly reimagine what the vehicle could look like. And I think we're in the phase right now, frankly, from an overall design and aesthetic standpoint, we're still making horseless carriages in EV. Like we haven't evolved to the point where
right.
those vehicles visually and like the things you need and the things you don't and the trade-offs you make, they're going to be free over time to evolve in wildly new ways.
I'll tell you a little interesting story. I just watched this documentary on Lord Montague, which his family were one of the first to have a horseless basically the gas powered car. They were the horseless carriages of the day in England, right? He had one, the Dalmer, one of the first cars ever. And basically back at the turn of the 20th century, and those cars only went like 4 or 5 miles an hour. They didn't go very fast. You had to have a person walking in front of you waving a red flag to clear anybody out of the way. So the whole point of having it, and then they were noisy. So the documentary talks about, because Lord Montague started the National Automotive Museum in England, which includes motorcycles too. It was interesting because there was so much hesitancy and so much hatred for the horseless carriage at that time.
Yeah.
People hated them. They were like, what is this? It's a nuisance. Only, it wasn't until they got mass adoption that really the Model T and all that, where it became what it is. But, at the time,
there
it
were
was
arguments.
just...
There were arguments at the time. It's like, why am I going to buy a car? My horse can graze in any field and refuel. I've got to find specific places to fuel up. And you're like, oh, like there's a parallel there with like the growth of infrastructure for EV that feels really familiar.
Yeah. And, speaking of that infrastructure, how do you feel about where things are infrastructure wise do you think that we have enough right now to move forward? Does it need to be a lot more? I mean, people are always worried about range with electric. I don't know why, because really when you look at it, most people aren't riding, your range, even of the XB, the one that only does like 40 or 50 miles on a full charge, that's more than a lot of people drive in a day.
Yeah, especially on dirt. Our larger format bikes go about 180 miles on a single charge.
Yeah,
and the average recreational ride in the US is between 80 and 90 miles. So there's more than enough range. Some of it's psychological. Like you people worry about it and you buy a bike for like the corner case of like, what if I just want to get on the bike in Santa Cruz, California and drive to the southern tip of the Baja Peninsula with a bug out? I want to quit my job. I want to walk out the door and get on the bike and ride. You're like, we have people that have done rides like that have like driven cross country. We have a ton of stories about people that take electrics on these coast to coast adventures. But like, if you want to just throw your leg over a bike and do no planning and just leave your life and go somewhere else, maybe electric isn't quite there for just about any other use case. We're there from a range standpoint. Infrastructure is a reason to be really encouraged. I mean, the ongoing growth of EV infrastructure, even like level 2, which is what most of the guns you see out there, even without the Tesla supercharger network, it's a leading indicator of future demand, and it's outpacing in most countries what you're seeing. And it's wildly different in Europe. You have countries like Norway where they're the number one in the world for electric vehicle adoption.
Is
and
Norway number one? I thought
skyrocketing.
Sweden was up there too, but
both the Nordics generally adopting in huge ways, but Norway is number one as far as adoption. And Their infrastructure and investment in infrastructure and growth is amazing. You're seeing great expansion of infrastructure in the States, but typically in the higher population areas.
Yeah.
But like every year, the additional coverage that you get in charge points, it's not even really a factor anymore. You have them even in relatively small and rural towns.
Right. And now
So
with all the apps you can go on, you can see where the, it's like a gas station app. You
yeah,
can see where the charging places are. So,
at the same
I
time,
think,
like if efficiencies of the vehicle, the battery technology is continuing to evolve, and the range in the vehicles continues to get better. So all of those combinations say like the pressure on range anxiety is lowering and lowering as you go through time. So
now let's go back to the dealer part of it here. So you'd mentioned, so there's, a lot of benefits for a dealer to come on board, as far as, hey, you've got this new initiative, you're gonna have,
yep.
but you've got like finance, some great financing terms. Like, can you explain some of that?
Yeah, so appreciate the question. So first we have now vehicles and price ranges and performance categories where there's real chances to do volume after having built the brand, distribution, and tech. On top of that, we try to make it really easy to do business with Zero, right? So um, we have what I think are among the most generous dealer terms in the industry, significant free flooring, really low onboarding costs, a ton of marketing support programs for both social media and websites. So in the details a little bit from a flooring standpoint, we offer free flooring from order placement from our dealers through December 31st of that next year. We'll do automatic extensions as needed for dealers who re-engage for the following year's order programs. So any dealer that manages his inventory even reasonably well isn't going to play any flooring interest for Zero.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, that's
minimum
important right now.
I mean, it's huge, especially with the inventory levels. We stand behind the dealers that partner with us. From
Yeah.
like a minimum rep standpoint, we enforce, of course, like a minimum rep from the dealers from the start of a new model year through the start of the year to August 15th. It's relatively light. We're not talking about building out a separate building or even like merchandising guidelines that have them going out of pocket
Right.
in any significant way. And then from
They
August
just need to
15th
carve
forward,
out a little area in their dealership
that's
to
it.
be
Like you
able to
want to
have.
sign, you want like some POS, POPs, signage.
Right.
You want to represent the brand in the right way, but it's not some of the things you saw over the last few years as a brand would get a really hot bike. They would
And a lot of
leverage
people are
in.
finding this stuff online anyway. Like, where's
Sure.
my local dealer? So you've got more connectivity behind the scenes too, right?
Yeah,
With like your dealer spikes and
absolutely.
your,
Yeah.
yeah.
So for us, two big programs. One, and these are opt-in, but we have a program called Thumb Stopper. So we partnered with a company that provides automatic posting on dealers' social media channels if they enable it and they want it. So
Oh, okay.
we can post on their behalf and make it simpler to push whatever the current story is. We have full-time staff people on our team to make sure we're generating posts that are unique to each individual dealer's current inventory.
Oh,
So
wow.
we're not just posting, here's what we want to talk about. We're driving traffic for units that that dealer actually has available to retail today. And we don't charge anything for this. On the web side, we have Dealer Spike, it's a new initiative for 2025. We tested it in 23 and 24. We can build out dedicated Zero Motorcycles pages for our dealers' websites. We cover the cost. We're using it as a tool to achieve a handful of things. Number one, at no cost to the dealer, we give them a fully branded experience to help grow our brand in their market. And we give them additional visibility into the customer journey. So like, when did this customer come in? What pages did they look at? What are the analytics? It helps us sharpen our digital advertising in their regions, and it helps improve just how precise we are on lead generation. So as we give them a lead, they know if they call it, that's a hot lead and it's a person that's likely to convert. And it gives a better sense of confidence to customers. Like they come in and they see a page that looks professional and the dealer didn't have to
Yeah.
go hire a web guy. And it's like, oh, the dealer's engaged, they have inventory, we're supporting them and making it as easy as possible to sell. So
I mean, that
from
seems like an amazing, um, you know, benefit of having that, being able to not have to put a lot of effort in. You guys have already got it set up pretty much. So it's really plug and play in a
That's the
lot of
goal.
ways.
We want to make it really easy to do business. We respect our dealer partners. We know that our future runs through them, and we want to make it as easy as it can be for them to onboard with very little financial risk. and provide all the support that they need in what is a growing adoption market to be a part of the Zero family.
Now, do you see, the certain areas growing? Is there certain hot spots and things where Zero really does well? There's certain, markets and things where it does well and where you see growth, or is it kind of like it's growing steady all over and.
Yeah, like there are definitely pockets of growth. It's where you would expect it to be. You have like the West Coast of the United States, both from like just a motorcycle penetration standpoint and an EV penetration standpoint,
Yeah.
massive opportunity in the key markets in and around urban centers. With the launch of these two sort of more affordable off-road bikes, the dealer interest is spiking in areas that are new for us, that are more rural and suburban as opposed to urban. And then you have
Yeah.
these pockets that you wouldn't expect, like all the major motorcycle markets, Florida, New York, Texas, even Pennsylvania, like you see like really good strength. And then around urban centers, and you have these pockets that pop up where you have a dealer. Like in Utah, we have an amazing dealer that just blows the doors off of most of the other dealers in the country, and they just have a dedicated, committed dealer principal. They've been super consistent with their staff and the training,
I,
and they've just seen a ton of success.
I think that's a lot of it too, is like, hey, it doesn't, if you're dedicated to it and you want to put, you can make it work, you can find that market for it. Because I do think there is, even in areas where you don't think that people would be interested, I think there are always people interested, and maybe they come from far and make it a destination dealer. But I think that's one of the things. It's just the amount of effort you want to put into it, but at the same time, it's nice that you make it so easy
Yeah.
for a dealer to get on board. So when do you think? Okay, you've got these two bikes that are out now, the XB and what was the other
XE.
one? The
The
XE.
XE and the XB. Yep.
And when do you see the next round of bikes coming out?
So you'll see, like most brands, the announcements in the fall for what the sort of the next phase in that 2-year cycle is for us. So by next fall, people have a slice at least the next two vehicles that are coming in that 6 vehicle offense. And maybe, I don't even know that I'm up to speed on what is the latest calendar for teas, building momentum, giving clarity.
Right.
Marketing
Because it's a whole
team.
thing, and you can't just look at it like, oh, it's going to be two. You have to have the whole rollout phase of a vehicle. Is like you've got the tease, where is it in the development phase, but where is it also in the build up to
Sure.
releasing it? You
And you want to
know,
make sure that like you're mapping new product development after it gets through validation, the vehicle's working the way you want before we put it into the hands of our dealers, influencers, consumers, test rides and events. We want to make sure we put the bike after the full development process, we put it through its paces before we go and do that, right? So that's how it maps up. For as example, for the XE and the XB, if people are interested in some of those new bikes, there are a handful of events coming up. We're going to be at the MotoGP event at the Circuit of the Americas at
okay,
the end of March in Austin, Texas.
yeah, that's coming up.
X-Line will be there on display. We'll have demos available for the remainder of our line. We're going to be going to the Biltwell 100 race in the Mojave, April 5th and 6th. We'll have 8 riders who are racing XEs, XBs, DSRXs, and demos available at that point for the X-Line in April. There are a few Electrify Expo stops coming up that'll be on the calendar on our website. And then, of
I love
course,
Electrify Expo.
they're
I've
great.
gone
Yeah,
to. I went to one in Austin a couple years ago, and it was really really good. I think that those kind of events where you can showcase all the different
sure.
vehicle, and it was surprising to me because it was I was there at that time on the automotive side, but I was like, look at all these awesome bikes that were
Yeah,
here were
yeah.
there too, and vice versa. Now I go and I'm like, look at the cars, those are pretty cool. So
Yeah, our dealers will be running off-road demo events as well. But like what I would encourage any consumer who might be listening or any dealer who might be listening, like throw a leg over one of the bikes. Our existing
yeah.
bikes, which are like they're the gold standard for what premium electric vehicles can be and do. And then the XE and XB, these new vehicles like are so unbelievably capable and so impressive. Throw a leg over the bike, give it a shot. Like, we have a ton of interest. We stand behind our dealers. We make it as easy as possible for them to be a partner with us, and we'd love to have people come knock on the door.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being with us, and I wish you all the success. I think these new bikes it's definitely in a good category that has a lot of, that's a growing category, and I think that it's a great way to get new riders in and new people exposed to what electric can be like, and so I'm excited to see where things go, and let's definitely keep in touch to
Yeah.
and yeah, I got to throw a leg over one of these, so we'll have to get, do you guys go to Vintage Days at all, or do you, I mean, I'm sure that's
I'll find out where we're going to be. You're there in Akron. Like I said, like I grew up just over the hill. So we'll absolutely get you a bike. I already have a note into our marketing crew to give you a chance to throw a leg over.
Yeah.
Brendan, hey, I really appreciate you taking the time. This outlet, I've been remiss in coming and talk to you guys, and our dealer partners are the most important connection between us and our consumers. So I just really appreciate the opportunity to come in and talk about Zero and what we're building.
I appreciate it. Well, thank you so much. And we'll keep on the, well, I would say keep on the gas, but you want to just stay on the throttle.
We just stay on the throttle, right? We'll stay on the throttle and
we'll just stay on the throttle. Yeah. We'll keep it at that. But yeah, hey, thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Brendan.
Thank you.
If you like this podcast, please like, share, and subscribe. We also invite you to connect with us on powersportsbusiness.com.